Nice.
I'd like to propose a bold concept before we wrap up for the holidays.
I feel
right,
like I
all
know
right.
where this is going to go.
I think you know where it's going to go. Have we all seen Star Wars Episode
Knew
8?
it. Yes.
Are
We all have seen it.
Are we gonna do a spoiler?
He
cast?
saw it. Yeah, let's do a quick spoiler cast and just talk.
Okay.
We can keep
Okay.
it quick. We don't have to go on and on.
Okay.
But we've all seen
We
it.
have all seen it.
Listeners, we're going to talk about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy. We're going to talk about Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, the final Jedi.
Spoiler warning.
Awooga. So if you don't want to hear about some spoilers, because we're going to go right into those for The Last Jedi, we're going to talk. We're not going to go on and on about it, but we are going to just talk about spoilers. So if you're sensitive to it, please turn it off now or skip ahead for something potentially towards the end of the show. But anyway, this is where we're at right now. So I'm going to sort of set the stage a little bit here. This is a bit of a controversial one. No, that said,
I guess first things first, let's get the high level, like, did you like it or did you not like it from each of us?
Okay.
Sid?
I did like it. I liked it more than Force Awakens by a fair bit.
Kristen?
I definitely liked it.
I also definitely liked it.
Okay.
So we're all in agreement.
Yes, that was a good note there, Justin. And this movie, this one's a bit controversial.
There will be no conflict in this segment. We should just abandon this whole idea.
Right. But I know in the fan base
there are
is
moments we could play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have, whenever I go see a movie, I love to then read every think piece I can find. I go to Reddit and see what the movies thread is all about, even though I rarely agree with everybody. I just love seeing what people thought about this movie. So I'm really aware of why people dislike it.
Give us the overview, like the Cliff's Notes on what it is that's driving people insane about this movie.
Yeah. So I would say number one, a lot of people have been upset with the characterization of Luke. They don't like how hopeless he feels in some ways.
They made him like a crotchety old man.
A little bit, yeah.
That's astonishing to me, though.
I loved it.
It's so perfect that they did that.
For some people, that's just not what they anticipated.
They didn't like the green milk scene.
Yeah, I will say I think everybody liked the green milk scene. Like you gotta get weird in Star Wars.
That was great. That was great.
So I loved that. But
and it's a callback to the original movie where they're sitting there drinking the green blue milk and there's so many references in that movies.
I never made that connection.
Yeah.
You know, please continue, and then I'll come back with my point.
I would say one thing: a lot of people felt that the Finn Rose casino plot line was a bit of a clunker. Towards the end, you kind of see how it comes back a little bit, but understandable.
Okay.
There were some people who were upset with how key beats and questions from Force Awakens. Who is Snoke? Who are Rey's parents? That felt very, very important mysteries in Force Awakens are then revealed to be not important. Which
I love that they did that.
I loved it too.
So that's the thing. I think a lot of the things that people are upset about, it's just what you personally think are interesting narrative choices.
Yeah.
So for me, I thought all three of those things were very the Rey, the Finn and Rose plotline was a bit of a clunker.
It needed some work. Yeah, it wasn't quite there.
That said, you know, it's a stuffed movie. They got a lot of characters to try to make it work. So I get that there's going to be. That said, I loved that new actress. I thought Rose was a great character.
Yeah. They just didn't give her a whole lot to do.
Yeah.
She did have a very important scene close to the end when she sort of prevents Finn from piloting into the heart of the whatever that thing was.
It felt like a lot of their scenes, though, all ended up culminating in teaching Poe a lesson.
Yeah.
Especially like the whole Laura Dern, I forgot, Holdo?
Commander Holdo?
Yeah.
I want to say.
I think so.
The whole thing, like, I don't know. That whole thing was kind of weird where he attempted the mutiny and then, oh no, it turns out that this was all part of the plan after all. Like, why didn't she just like say like, dude, chill out, I have a plan?
I think the idea is she's the boss, so she doesn't have to do that.
Yeah,
I read a good article about
thing.
that. What I did like is they kind of put the character of Poe Dameron in its place a little bit, which was an interesting approach, and I think that also bothered people because he was like the hot, sexy new Han Solo wannabe kind of guy, and I like that actor a lot. Oscar Isaac is great. And I liked that character in that movie. I like that character more in this movie than I did in the last one because he's a real character.
He's fleshed out.
Yeah.
He has. That's what I liked about this movie. Everybody has faults. Nobody is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, failure is important, as Yoda was explaining to Mark Hamill, which
Great
I
message.
loved. I loved that it was more animatronic
Yoda.
It
was like the Return of the Jedi style or Empire style.
Now here's one of the things I loved about this film is I felt like the blue-green milk scene is a good example of this, but I feel like the movie kind of, I tweaked its nose at some Star Wars purists or folks who are really, really hell-bent on kind of the past, and I think that was quite frankly the theme of the entire movie.
Yeah, let the past die.
Yeah, and
it's Luke throwing his lightsaber over his shoulder.
That surprised me. I loved that. I instantly fell in love with the movie when I saw that scene, because that is not what you were expecting at all.
Yeah.
And when Luke just tosses it like a empty bag of chips over his shoulder, that is amazing. And I think that's it's not. This movie basically deconstructs the original trilogy. It's a, not to get all academic about it, but I looked this word up just to make sure I had it right. It's a postmodern interpretation of Star Wars, and that basically means it's approaching the original Star Wars films with a certain degree of skepticism. And that's fair, because those movies are like 40 years old. It was a different time. It was the go-go 70s. It was a totally different era. Like the world was in a different place. And this film is much more a product of its era, as it should be. We should not be trying to relive and remake things that were relevant 40 years ago. Those movies are wonderful because they're discoed out, They're late 70s, they're 80s, they're unabashed, they do their thing. You don't want to keep going back and just doing that same thing over and over and saying, well, here's Luke again, doing the same thing again. No, Luke is even looking at his part in all of this and feels like he's been,
I love how he just comes right out with it, and he's like, a lot of stuff went wrong while the Jedi were in power, and a lot of it was their fault.
Yeah,
it's not romanticizing this religion and making them out to be like paragons of pure goodness and light. Like they had faults, just like Kristen was saying, like everybody else in the movie has faults, and it's very realistic about everything that has happened in the series up until that point.
It's more grounded, and it's not done in a way to be edgy just for the sake of it. I don't think it was provocative just to be provocative. I think it was a genuinely thought-provoking, and for Star Wars, asterisk, very risky. Like, I got in a couple of minor Twitter exchanges, a couple of volleys of tweets with a few folks whose opinion I respect.
I saw that the other day.
You see that? And what I got was, what about this is risky and thought-provoking? And I'm like, literally the movie is thumbing its nose at the original trilogy, and particularly the prequels. There's a number of references. Did you catch the reference where Luke Skywalker sarcastically says, "What am I gonna do? Face down the Last Order or the New Order with a laser sword?"
Yeah.
That is a direct shot at. I mean, it's not a shot at George Lucas, but George Lucas.
Yeah.
That is. There are all these winks and nods that were there to shake you up as a viewer if you like Star Wars. And if you've ever heard me talk about Star Wars, I like Star Wars. I am not a fanatic, but I do like it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot about it. But this movie is the most excited I have felt about a Star Wars movie since I was 8 years old watching those original ones. I mean,
I agree.
Force Awakens was fine. It got everything back on track. Rogue One was fine.
I will say I'm a bigger Star Wars fan now than I was a week ago.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes. Kylo Ren is a real standout in this. I really thought that character was.
I loved those scenes. With
Terrific.
Rey and Kylo.
Holy
Oh my
hell,
god,
yeah.
the scene where they're back to back.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
When you think for a moment that wait, he's good now. Where does the series go from here?
Yeah.
That just like that 5-minute fight scene where you think that wow, everything is working out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh no, actually he's gonna do this. And you even see it in Rey's face, like, oh,
yeah,
really, we did all this, and now you're gonna just
But even in that moment, again though, it's subverting what the originals did, because it was always that Darth Vader was in the shadow of the Emperor.
Yep.
He was always sort of grumbling underneath, and I thought it was awesome. I mean, I don't think it's great what the character is doing, but as a character choice, I think it's awesome that he was just like, I'm at the top now. I'm doing this now. I don't need a supreme leader. Blah blah blah.
And he wipes this guy off his boot basically, and that is shocking because here's the reality, folks. I know there's folks out there like, oh, but Snoke, who's Snoke? It's like, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
It doesn't actually matter.
Exactly.
he's some guy.
Yeah, he's some guy. Like, was the Emperor that interesting? No, it was what he represented.
I agree.
And it was the dynamic between the Emperor and Luke and Vader. That's what made the Emperor interesting. We
Okay.
saw a whole trilogy where they went into the whole Palpatine backstory, and it was like a snooze fest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. The most important question though, and this is where things might get really heated. Porgs, yay or nay?
I'm pro Porg. I'm
Very
pro Porg.
pro Porg.
I'm Porg. Like
They're cute. It's fun.
yeah.
I felt it was just one scene overdone.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
say,
I agree.
I would say if they had dialed back the Chewbacca scene where he's about to eat one and they all look, I think if they had cut away the last one that really, really looked at him miserably, I think it would have been a funnier joke. They held that one just a little too long.
I'm just really afraid of walking into any store for the next 6 months and it's just porgs everywhere.
It will absolutely happen, and I'm here for it, and I will buy one, and I loved it.
My theory on the porgs, though, from like a kind of a narrative storytelling perspective, is I think they were actually there for a significant reason. I don't think I obviously Star Wars, because it's part of Star Wars, like, you know, putting
they're the Ewoks of
they're a lot less annoying too, if I may, and way cuter. But I think part of, if you recall some of the scenes where you see the porgs like doing porg stuff, like there's scenes where like they're nesting and you can see them like in a nest and they're like tending to their children. I think they were put there as a sort of, it symbolizes kind of, you know, nature and like life, you know what I mean? And I think that's important because you know, with where Luke Skywalker is, things are kind of dark for him. He's in, you know, despair over these things that have happened. And I think it actually really worked. I think it also helped bring a little bit of levity. I don't think it was like, you know, I don't think it was as annoying as some other folks think it is. And yeah, they're going to sell cute toys and things like that, but it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me nearly as much as the tentacle monsters in The Force Awakens. That was way more obnoxious to me, and they weren't cute either. They were just like, ugh, like it was just too much. Like it was too CG. It was too.
How cool was it to see Luke Skywalker get to do some badass Luke Skywalker
Loved
stuff
it
at the end of the movie,
and the way that was done, so good.
Yeah, that caught me completely off guard. I did not see that twist coming at all until it was revealed. And I thought that was the fact that they were able to take something like the Force. Everybody knows what people can do with the Force. Like there's all these tricks. You can do the Force push and the Force pull and the jump and the mind control and everything. But no one ever really considered this utilization of it, and it worked so well. And then when you think about it, I saw somebody point out that, like, oh, he doesn't leave red footprints when he walks out on that white surface. Like, that's a subtle little hint.
A hindsight.
And you make a great point there. You know, even Leia, when she gets blown out the airlock, and I was like, okay, because I was waiting for her to die the entire movie, and she never does.
Yeah.
And which was, I thought, a really cool choice. But when she gets sucked out the airlock, I'm like, okay, that's it. And then they keep showing her, and I'm like, something's going to happen here.
Yeah.
And then she floats back in using the Force. Now, some people think that's dumb, but I disagree. I think.
Well, she's been revealed to be like Force sensitive.
Well, for sure.
Before,
she's
right?
Luke Skywalker's twin sister. She's not a Jedi, but she also, like, she did telepathy in the old movies. And I think it is
in a life or death situation.
Totally understandable. Like, again, this is dream logic. This is Star Wars. It's fantasy. It's not
space magic.
It's space magic. So what I like, though, is they reintroduced unknown to the Force, because the Force was turning into this. Well, okay, like you said, you got your Force push and you got your Force choke.
Here's the list of moves you can do,
and then
with
that's
Force.
it. Yeah, and they're going and they're sort of saying, well, let's take a step back, and there's so much you could do with stuff like this. It's just exciting and interesting. Like they didn't. The writer-director, I forget his name. Everyone's been saying it, but I'm bad with names.
Rian Johnson?
Ryan Johnson, that's it?
I believe so.
That's pretty simple.
Yep.
I should be able to remember
that. The way
that.
he spells Ryan is weird, though.
Okay, so that's what's throwing me. Okay.
Ryan Clements.
When
Ryan
Ryan Clements sat down to write The Last Jedi, no, I think he basically said, let's just start making this fresh. Let's start doing some new things. Let's introduce mystery and awe and wonder and unclear character motivations. Recall back when, I don't know about you guys, but when I first saw The Empire Strikes Back as a kid, it blew me away that Vader was Luke's father. And in the 80s, that was an appropriate way to approach, that was very straightforward. It was very simple. This movie murkies everything up. It's all mucked up. You're like, Rey's grappling with the dark side, and Kylo Ren's grappling with the good side, and Kylo Ren kills his dad but won't kill his mom, and like all these, it's just cool. Like the characters aren't so black and white.
Yeah, they're
still recognizable in their archetypes. It's postmodern, like it's Luke Skywalker's pretty much all good in that original trilogy, except for an alleged flirtation with the dark side, in Return of the Jedi. And Darth Vader is 99% bad, except for the very end of Return of the Jedi, where suddenly he has a change of heart.
Yeah,
but
he redeems himself.
This movie, these characters are way more vital. They're vibrant. They're all over the place. They're uncertain. Luke Skywalker has a brief moment where he almost kills Kylo Ren when he's sleeping as a student, if you recall that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's cool. That's interesting.
I loved the scene of him explaining
it
too, of like him just saying immediately the shame and then immediately the consequence. I think it's great to deconstruct a character like that. Like they're as great as it is to imagine that like after, Return of the Jedi, everything would have been hunky dory for 40 years and Luke Skywalker will always be just a hopeful, happy dude.
People change.
Yeah. And I think it was a risky move to characterize him the way that they did. And I think it was a great choice.
And so when people come to me and they say, what was so thought-provoking and risky? These are the things I say. This is actually...
Especially considering that this is a Star Wars. It's the biggest franchise in the world. It's owned by Disney.
Yes.
Like, you don't see a lot of Disney movies that really go out on a limb and take big risks like this.
Agreed.
Because in a lot of cases, they don't really need to.
They don't need to. And
Star Wars didn't need to, but it did anyway.
I think, that's a great point. I would actually make the argument that it kind of needed to.
For me, it did.
It did
but
too,
for the world, they could have just gone and made another Empire Strikes Back.
They could have made a lot of money. And that's another thing I've heard complaints. I had some dinner with friends the other night, and they said, there's a lot of this sort of like cynicism in some ways around this movie that I don't fully understand, but I think over time people are going to realize what it did. I think it's a little too soon. I actually heard people talking about Empire Strikes Back when it first came out. A lot of people didn't care for it.
Yeah.
They said this movie's too dark. This isn't Star Wars. What happened to all the fun, lighthearted stuff?
Yeah. And now it's remembered.
And now it's a classic for all of. I mean, it's truly a classic, like a true classic film. But the thing about this movie, one of the complaints I've heard too is, Last Jedi, it's just too much like Empire Strikes Back. It's very obvious. They're just going, it's just a remake of Empire Strikes Back. And I was like, look, I'll give you that they are making some references. There's a homage or two, but they're doing it partially to then do something totally different. Mm-hmm. So there's a few, there's, the Imperial Walkers are in it, and bigger and badder than ever. There's an isolated planet. I mean, okay, but there's a few, and there's the throne room scene, where Kylo kills Snoke. That's
maybe the coolest looking scene in the whole movie too, with like all the red, and the way that they framed everything.
I would say for me the coolest looking scene was the commander kamikazing into that ship. That silent moment of it. That was just beautiful.
That was
beautifully
really cool.
shot. I guess as a full scene, I would agree the throne room, but for a particular shot, there's a lot of ways that they could have shot that, and
it was great.
I thought it was a brilliant,
massive impact.
Yep.
Sometimes when everything's really loud, making everything totally silent has more impact.
Yeah, I agree.
And then a couple of things that I didn't love about the movie, but didn't hugely impact my feeling about it. I thought the actual plot of the film was not all that interesting. Like, okay, here's this rebel cruiser who's just going to retreat forever from 2 Star Destroyers who can't seem to get through these shields. Yeah. But those are the kinds of things people get hung up on plot.
It's a plot device.
It doesn't matter.
Unimportant
in the scheme of things. I would have liked to have seen that be something a little bit more interesting. And again, that sequence with the casino planet and all the back and forth and the kind of wild goose chases the characters go on. Didn't love all of that. Mm-hmm. But when you have a movie that's deconstructing themes like this, that's taking characters we know and love and making a statement about them, about our past, about our own myths. See, that's the thing, is Star Wars is the American myth. I think everyone understands innately that Star Wars, particularly the original trilogy, just it looms large in American culture more than any other creative work, right? I mean, other than like the Bible or something,
I think that's why it was. I think it's an interesting
creative
choice.
Work.
Then
I didn't mean that as a slam.
No,
by the way,
you're fine.
Go ahead.
I think that's a creative choice though to have. I felt like the overall message, like you had said earlier, was partially, Kylo Ren's let the past die. We're moving beyond what these archetypes were previously.
Yep.
But the revelation of Rey's parents, and then that little coda at the end of the movie, where we see the stable broom boy grabbing his broom using the Force and looking up and having that resistance ring. And I think I had made an earlier comment, I don't remember if it was in this podcast or if I was just talking with you guys, of that I'm ready to move past the Skywalker.
Yes, 100%.
And I think this was an elegant and beautiful way to do that.
Indeed.
That anyone could have the Force.
This really sets up the series to be able to last for a really long time too. Yes. The idea that anybody can be a Force for good, or anybody can be a Jedi. Otherwise, do they just, because up until this point it has been a series revolving completely around the Skywalker lineage,
and that's a great lineage and it's a really interesting story. But here's the heart of what I think. I totally agree with you, and I picked up on this quickly as well. Here's the thing. What was the most exciting thing about the original Star Wars? It was the fact that a simple farm boy could take on an empire.
Yeah.
Then in the second one, they bring in all this lineage and royalty. That's essentially what it is. It's a bloodline. It's Skywalker. Oh, Skywalkers are these powerful. And that's super cool, but it kind of torpedoes the original appeal of a simple farm boy or a nobody tackling an empire. Right. And I think that is actually at the very heart of what makes Star Wars so special. And it's turned into it's royals, all fighting over dynasties. And so you're absolutely right. When they bring it back with the stable boy and Rey as a nobody, that is way cooler to me. That is what Star Wars really is. So that's all. And again, that's risky. Yeah. That's not, they could have just phoned this whole thing in. It would have been so much easier. Like and I love that they're giving Rian Johnson, now I know his name. They're I know how to pronounce it. They're giving him his own trilogy, and I'm like, yeah, that's good.
Have they said whether that's going to be like 10, 11, 12, or is it going to be something
They haven't
different?
said.
They haven't said.
Yeah.
Huh.
If I had to take a guess, that would be my assumption, but it's hard to say. But I kudos to Rian Johnson.
I'm here for more Rian Johnson Star Wars.
Yes, yeah, and JJ's back in the saddle on 9, and I'm sure he'll do a fine job. But I would encourage JJ, like, take a few risks, like do something dangerous. That's
don't end it on a cliffhanger, please.
Well, I mean, he produced The Last Jedi, so he's definitely still been involved throughout the whole process. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how he ends up wrapping it all up, especially now with Leia will no longer be part of the movie. I assume.
Yeah,
so sad.
So I thought even without the character getting a send off, I thought this movie was a brilliant send off for Carrie Fisher. I saw there was an interview with Mark Hamill that he said that the final shot that they have together of like Spirit Luke essentially giving the dice to Leia and saying their goodbyes, he said that he actually has trouble watching the movie because it sort of is like him having his goodbye with her, and I just thought it was really touching.
Yep. I thought it was a very well done movie. It has its issues, but the issues that people I think are hung up on are actually strengths, not weaknesses. The issues I have are more just some of the plot stuff could have used some tightening up and all that. But look, if that's all we're dealing with and we got a movie that rich and thought-provoking, I can totally live with it. So I thought that was a great movie.
So I think about 50% of our show has been talking about The Last Jedi. We're going to get some real angry comments here.
It's happy holidays. We're getting ready to pack it in.